In life, we encounter people every day, all of whom have stories to share. We rarely take the time to ask people their personal stories, many of which will touch, move, and inspire us in some way. Matt has a passion for making authentic connections and learning about people from all walks of life. He has lived a life of giving back to the community and making a difference in people's lives. Are you ready to meet fascinating people and hear some inspiring stories? The Matt Hilton Show will introduce you to a world of possibilities you never knew existed. Sit back, be present, and enjoy. Here's your host, Matt Hilton.
Hey everyone, Matt Hilton here with the Matt Hilton Show. Thanks for tuning in again. Today's guest is a returning guest, and you know who it is if you watched last week's episode. So stay tuned for a word from our sponsor.
Inspired, experienced, customer focused. Find a mortgage that fits your needs with Maria Leach at First United Bank Mortgage, specializing in construction and closing all types of loans, including jumbo, portfolio, conventional, FHA, and VA. A tenured team, outstanding service, competitive programs. Finance your dreams with Maria Leach at First United Bank Mortgage. mleach.firstunitedteam.com, 214-316-7915. mleach at firstunitedbank.com. Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
This is part 2 of our interview with Maria Leach. She works with First United Bank, and they are one of our premier sponsors. And today, our talk is going to be mostly about the real estate market and how it has changed since our last conversation back in June, and some creative financing ways. So, Maria, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And so glad you're here. And we're going to continue our conversation from last week. I loved our conversation that we had about the 4 pillars of First United. And I just hope that if you didn't see the show last week, that you'll go back and either listen to it or tune in because there are a lot of good nuggets in that show.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, for sure. So the last time that we talked was in June. The market is a little different here in November of 2022 than it was back in June. So what have you seen from the lending side that has changed over the past 5 months?
Well, obviously rates have gone up, but the first thing I'm going to say is we're lucky we live in Texas.
Amen.
Because in Texas,
totally agree.
We don't have the same issues. We have issues that they're having all over the country, but we're still strong in real estate here in Texas. So yes, interest rates have gone high. Yes, they've come down a little bit again. Yes, we anticipate they can go up again. But or they can go down again too. Exactly. Right. But if we look at the history of rates, like my first interest rate was 8.75. An average, if we can get back to that 5.5 and a 6, that's really a comfortable average and very good. Would we ever probably see 2% again? It's going to be such a long time if it ever. I mean, that was just like a small little miracle or something for everybody.
Right.
So we just have to get that mindset again. And I think that while it has increased some payments for people for depending on the loan amount, a couple $100 if you go from 4% to 7%. But we're back down in the mid 6s really now. But when we're up at the 7s, you were seeing maybe a $300 or $400 difference. But what we've offered at First United is that 2-1 buy down that we talked about. So
let's talk about that a little bit.
Let's say rates are 6.5, 6.25. Then the first year it's going to be 4.25. The second year it's going to be 5.25, and then it goes to 6.25. So we've got 2 years to get that lower payment and sort of build up. Now,
how does somebody qualify for that? Because I know back in the subprime era,
it's not subprime.
Yeah, the people were qualifying at the 4.25 versus the
right. So the buyer can't pay for that program. The seller has to pay for it.
Okay. For this 2-1 buy down, the seller has to pay.
And realtors can't pay for it.
Okay.
So only the seller can pay for it. So it has to be. And this is where we're blessed to be in Texas too, because let's say that the house was listed for $450. Well, we know that in Texas, it'll probably still appraise for $470. So you could possibly increase the sales price to help. Seller can pay all closing costs. I mean, there's ways of making that work so that you could get to that buy down that you're looking for. We're also saying that we believe that rates will go down in the next 2 to 3 years. Mm-hmm. So if you do whether it's the 2-1 buy down or any loan with First United right now, once rates do drop, we'll refinance you with no lender costs, no origination, no processing, no underwriting.
Can I ask you about that real quick?
Yes.
Because there are other lenders out there that say, there are lenders who say that they will give a refinance for free, but it's not really for free. They're going to make their money somehow. So
First United
How is that
truly
different?
won't make any money on that loan.
how is that different?
Well,
with
we
First United?
service loans. We don't sell them. So we're
okay,
going to make
everybody,
money.
are you listening? They service their
They
loans.
we service our loans.
And what does that mean by
So that means
servicing?
they're going to make the money on the servicing.
Okay, and servicing means?
So it goes to all the loans are sold to Fannie Mae and then come back to us.
Okay.
So when you make your payment, you're not making we're not like a mortgage broker who sells everything. When you close with First United, you make your payments to First United.
So if I went through, when I bought a house in the past, I went through another mortgage company, and
Within
2 weeks or what, I got something from Chase or Wells Fargo.
Right.
So that means that the mortgage broker that I went through sold that
Correct.
to Wells Fargo in another.
And it's also, to me, it's a small, you have to be really careful in the verbiage. So I can't say we're going to refinance you for free because there's title fees. There's going to be no bank fees.
No bank fees.
No bank fees. So we charge $11.75 for underwriting and processing. Well, that's a good chunk of your refinance. If you refinance within 5 years in the state of Texas, you get a 50% discount on your title policy. So if the title policy, which is usually the largest cost, let's just say $3,000. If the seller paid it initially, we're going back, I think you're saying seller's paying title again. If the seller pays it initially, and then you're going to get a discount of 50%. Then when you come back, that's the biggest cost of your refinance because you're not going to have a bank cost. You're probably going to refinance for a few $1,000s. We get to use the survey from the first closing. You'll have to get a new appraisal, but it's extremely reasonable to think. So what we're trying to show our borrowers is it's still a strong market. We're still in Texas. Don't give up those dreams. There's ways to get comfortable with those payments, and we're going to help you through the next year or so until those rates come down.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about that 2-1 buy down, because I went through a class here recently and learned quite a bit, right, that I wasn't aware of, right? So you said the seller has to pay for that buy down. So how do they do that in an offer? Is it through the paragraph 12 seller concessions?
Yes, or I would do it in the sales price.
Or in the sales price. So you
Because I don't think you'll have enough in paragraph 12. Remember, there's a formula that we have for us to figure out what it's going to cost, right?
Right.
So it's all based on sales price and everything else. So we need to run that formula first. So we need to have a conversation before you write the offer. So we need to run the formula first so we know how much we really need. Because let's say it's going to cost $15,000 or $18,000, then most likely that's over our 3%, could be, right? Especially if we're trying to do the buy down and they were trying to pay title.
So let's talk about that
now
real
we
quick
might want to raise the sales
for the viewers so that you and I understand what we're saying.
Okay.
But our viewers may not be catching on as fast. No offense. It's just y'all aren't in the industry, right? So let's use a $400,000 sales price of a house. 3%-ish, right, is the max that is allowed for seller contributions.
So that would be $12,000.
So that's $12,000.
Right, but let's say that the title policy is $3,000, so that gets me down. So, and then let's say that they're going to give us the survey, that brings it down, and maybe the cost to do the 2-1 buy down is $15,000.
Okay, so let's talk, and so that all those numbers don't add up, right, to that $12,000 max.
So then we can't write an offer and then increase the sales price to cover closing costs.
Right. It needs to be done initially.
Needs to be done initially.
Yeah, for sure.
So if someone's really thinking about that 2-1 buy down, then it's good to have that initial conversation. One, to make sure, is it worth those costs? Okay, because I've seen a lot of people say, we want to do the break even. If it's going to cost $10,000 and we're only saving $40 and our break even is going to be over 2 to 3 years, then was it worth it? Pretty much it wasn't, because we're going to plan on those rates to come down. We're going to refinance anyway.
Yeah, but
But if it's someone that payment, if they're saving $300 or $400 a month on their payment,
right,
that's a totally different number.
Yeah.
So we want to have we want to make sure that when people are trying to buy that new house, that we have a conversation ahead of time, not when they're trying to write the contract. We want to have conversation about what we really qualify for. What's that really going to cost? So we know how to write the offer later. And do we really want to do that? Yeah. We've done a couple of 2-1 buy downs and they wanted to do them. And we've worked up the numbers on a few and it didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And they just went with regular conforming.
Okay. So one thing that I heard Maria say is when you get ready to buy a house, first you need to call Maria. Secondly, you need to call me to help you find that house. But when you have that conversation with Maria, is ask the questions like, what is the best loan product for my situation, for what I qualify, what I'm not necessarily what I'm approved for, right? But what I'm comfortable with spending per month, right? Because you could be approved for $800,000, but you may only be comfortable with paying a mortgage amount on a $450,000 house.
Exactly. And what I always try to tell people is that's how we start the conversation. I don't start the conversation with, let me pull your credit. Nobody wants to start the conversation that way. My conversation starts with, what are your plans? What price point are you thinking about? Where do you want to keep that payment? We just start plugging a few numbers in and take it from there.
Yeah.
The last thing I do is pull people's credit. I want to know what's on their credit, so I know if I income qualify, we have a conversation about it. I want to know if they feel like their credit's good or bad. If they know that their credit's not perfect, then at that point we've built a relationship. I ask them, well, why don't we consider pulling it? Because then I can help tell you how to fix it. I mean, I'm not trying I think a lot of times where the whole thing about being afraid of getting your credit pulled and things is when you go to one of the big banks and they just pull your credit and then say, okay, we can't do anything. You don't qualify. Goodbye. And there's no relationship there. And that's not what we're here for. We're here to build that relationship and to have that conversation. And there's no point in being fearful of it. We've got to find out at some point. You've got to find out at some point, if you don't have perfect credit, how to fix it. So, that's really what I like to get people to feel comfortable with. But I want to talk to them before they're looking, because otherwise they get very excited and there might be work we have to do, or there might be work we don't have to do, and they can go get really excited. I mean, but we still need to know that process. Do we want to do the 2-1 buy down? Do we want to go FHA? Do we want to go conventional? Is it going to be jumbo? Those are all things that I think people should have in place and understand well before. What's the difference in the interest rate if you put 20% down or 5%? Do they need to get a gift from a mom and dad? Do they need to borrow from their 401k? These are all things that people don't think about when they get excited about going and home buying.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think about the 3% down or the 5% down and forget about the closing costs. So I just want to educate, for the most part, so that we have everybody really comfortable once you're out there looking for something, then they can get excited and actually, go get it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, what we don't want to do, and that's why I recommend to all of our buyers, is to go talk to a lender such as yourself, right, first, before we even get in the car and go look at houses. Like,
absolutely.
There is no reason to go get disappointed, get excited about a house, and then get disappointed talking to you or somebody else. And it's like, why put the cart before the horse, right?
And that's another thing I love about First United. So anyone who's watching, along with just those conversations that we have, and these are what I call gentle conversations. I go at everybody else's pace. Whatever their pace is what we want to do. It's about education and learning. But if they're ready, First United will also totally pre-underwrite a file. So most banks will not take the time to do that because we do all that work up front, and they may go somewhere else. But we're not like that. Again, it's relationship based.
Yep.
We're willing to do that, believing that we're going to earn your business. We want to earn it, not just have it given to us. So we will completely underwrite someone's file, which means that when they go start to look, they already have 100% loan approval. We have to get an appraisal, but they're fully underwritten, paycheck stubs, bank statements, all of it has been reviewed. So they don't have to have any worry. And if they're in a competitive offer, and we still have competitive offers, that. We could close in 14 days.
Right.
I hope nobody from First United is but we can.
You can, yes, you can. And that's one of the reasons that I partner with you, is because you're one of the few lenders that I know of, right, that will do a underwriting approval, right? Because there is a pre-qualification that isn't really worth the paper that it's written on, right? They're just asking you, hey, you want to buy a house? What is your income? What is your debt? What do you think your credit score is? And then they give you a pre-qualification, right? So I won't work with someone who just has a pre-qual. A pre-approval is a step higher. Right? That's just the bank has looked at, or the mortgage company's looked at the statements or looked at this, that, and the other, but they haven't gone through the underwriting process.
The full underwriting process.
And so when you're writing an offer, like you said, if you have an offer with somebody who's gone through the complete underwriting, right? you don't have to check that box on that third-party financing addendum that says they need X number of days
Exactly.
to get approved. They're already approved, so you can check that other box that says this offer is not contingent on buyer approval.
Could still be contingent on
it's-
the appraisal.
Yeah, because
but
the
not a
next
buyer
paragraph talks
approval.
about,
Exactly.
on that third-party financing addendum, it talks about buyer approval and property approval. Buyer approval is separate from the property approval. So when you check that box under the buyer approval, it makes that offer stronger. And your agent needs to make sure that they point that out when they present the offer to the listing agent that, hey, my buyer it's not contingent on buyer approval. So
And that's
really key.
That's a really good point that you're making, that so many real estate agents aren't as thorough, like just you're even saying that. That's so, I think the biggest difference between a lot of real estate agents and a lot of lenders is they're selling. And you and I want to educate.
Yeah.
And there's such a huge difference in that. And I think that once somebody works with you or I and they see that, then that makes such an enormous difference, because that education process is huge. And it's funny that you mentioned the box from the appraisal is it contingent? So we do loans in all states. So I'm doing one in Florida right now. And so we had an appraisal waiver, but then they had the storm. So then we had to have an appraiser go out. It was always fun surprises. So
Sure.
we did a quick rush and we got it all done in time. But they were the listing agent or the buyer's agent, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but she was very extremely anxious. And I was going over, I was like, well, he already has approval. This is the property. Well, in Florida, they just recently changed it where they are tied together.
Oh.
So they were just all like flipping out, and I was like, "Oh, it's okay. We'll get the appraisal," and we got it done.
Right.
Really, really fast. But I was thought that was interesting because they do connect them. But I think that's odd, because I think financing and property should be separate.
They are, and that's the great thing about Texas is they are separate. So, and going back to the 2-1 buy down. So, and I'm talking about education. Sometimes we as agents have to, or realtors, right? We as realtors have to educate other agents that aren't familiar with these products. So there are a lot of agents out there that don't understand the 2-1 buy down and how it may work, right? So I presented an offer recently, and I had to explain what that product was to them because we were asking for closing costs, right? And they were like, "Why are you asking for closing costs?" And so I had to explain to them what that looked like. Another thing too, that it doesn't just have to be something that the buyer asks for in closing cost. It could be another marketing, making a listing more attractive to buyers by, instead of a seller taking a
offering.
price reduction, offer the 2-1 buy down.
Exactly.
And
That's a
so
great idea.
let's talk about that too, as far as what that looks like, because a $25,000 price reduction is going to cost a lot more to that seller than if they would have offered a 2-1 buy down. Is that correct?
Right. And well, I guess it all depends what that 2-1 buy down is going to cost too. But then at that point, you can also look at, for me, the 2-1 buy down's exciting, but it also sounds good in a sort of a way. I'm glad we have it, but and sometimes it's less expensive just to buy down origination and stay on the 30-year fixed, not do the 2-1. The rates a hair better. It all really depends on the whole picture and what their credit's like, where your loan amount is, how much they're putting down, just all of it. Because that 2-1 buy down could be pretty pricey.
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier about it might be better that let's see where rates are. What if you could just do the buyer himself could buy down and get, let's say, from 6.75 to 6.25 for a half point. Well, then if First United splits it with them, then that's way better than a 2-1 buy down. And it's unless they had to get that first that other payment being lower. The 2-1 buy down is really for that payment for that first time home buyer that needs to get that.
What I found interesting in what I know about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but on a 2-1 buy down, like let's just use round numbers, right? So let's use 7. Let's just say someone gets qualified at 7%. They could do a 2-1 buy down, and the first year their payment would be based upon a 5% interest rate, right?
Correct.
Second year is 6%. Third year forward is 7%. So the buy down from again what I understand, is the difference in the payment between 7% and 5% is what you multiply that difference in the payment of the two times 12. And then in the second year, the difference in the payment from a 7% to 6% times 12, you add those two numbers together, and that's what the buy down would cost. So in essence, this money is in a separate account, right?
Basically, yes.
Basically within the bank, right? And so each month, let's say the first month's payment, they're paying whatever that number is, let's just say $2,000. If it would have cost $2,300 at 7%, then $300 would be coming out of that separate account to supplement that payment. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I like the 2-1 buy downs. I like that $200 or $300 savings. But I also want to make sure, just like we always talk about education.
That's right.
Can that person afford that payment if it goes up? Now, we do anticipate they're going to go down, but maybe not in 12 months, right? Maybe it really is going to be 24 to 36 months before the rates fall a little bit where we can help them with that refinance. So I just always want to make sure, are they anticipating a raise? Are they anticipating a job change? Are they anticipating some things so that when that year changes and that payment goes up a little bit, they're still going to be okay.
Yeah.
In most cases, I think people will because they adjust to the payment, and then making $150 more, that's groceries right now. So we can step into that. So
Sure.
I think in that sense it can be really good, but you still want to always have a real detailed conversation so everybody's really clear. And they're going to feel comfortable with that later. But we qualify them, by the way, on the full 7%.
In that example, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was very interesting that I hadn't heard before this class that I took was the money that's in the buy down account is the buyer's money. So let's say they're in the house for a year and they get relocated and they've used 3/4 of that money. Then the other portion of that buy down that's sitting in that account is actually theirs. It doesn't go away. So I thought that was interesting. Like if rates do go down, maybe in that third year they can use, or maybe in the second year and they want to refinance, they can use some of that money to offset some of the
if they have
refinancing costs.
So that's just like, and we'll be getting with servicing on that. So it's just like when you refinance, you have to still set up the new escrow, but if you're doing it with First United, because we already are holding their loan, then we take everything from the current escrow and move it over. So it's the same thing. We'll be getting that payoff and that balance, and we'll just be moving it over.
Yeah.
Then if you go from Chase to First United, then we have to fully recollect, and then you have to get reimbursed from Chase.
Right.
On the escrow. So it is nice when it's staying in-house like that, because then it's all just being moved and you don't have to come up with the money then being reimbursed.
Right. Okay. Good deal. I love educating and talking through these type of things because it's we have had to come up with some creative type of financing, but the financing now is not like the financing it was during 2007, 2008 before the recession, right? I mean,
no, we still have to remember there's still just good old fashioned FHA. You don't have to have perfect credit, 3.5% down. You can go to 55 back in ratio. I did one that ran at 57. I mean, so, there's just there's still a lot of great loan products out there. And again, like you talking about 2007, 2008, we didn't fall back anywhere where other places in the country did. We had just a little fallback. And our property values are still strong. I mean, what do you feel? I mean, I think we've seen a slight adjustment, and I don't think it's so much on property value. I may be wrong. I think it's more on we had people writing 40 offers on things, and so that drove those property values so much higher than what the property values were. So I don't think the property values themselves have dropped. They're just not getting the same pricing because you don't have 40 offers, but you still have 5.
That's right. And what I see going on right now,
I don't know that as well as you do.
Is that we're the market is adjusting, right? And it's adjusting to where it was and where it should be prior to people paying $50,000, $100,000, whatever that number is, over the list price, over the market value at that time, right?
Now we're just still at market value.
Yeah, I mean, the market is still strong. We're still in a seller's market here. And I don't think people understand that. Like, our inventory is still low. Our demand is still high. The demand is maybe shadowed a little bit because of inflation and any type of political, like we just had the election, interest rates have gone up. So everybody's kind of, the buyers, the demand part is kind of taking a back seat, but the demand is still there. So our inventory is not increasing a lot. And right now it's kind of slowed. So if you have a house to sell, we need your house on the market to put out there for the buyers. But yeah, so we're still in a strong seller's market here in the North Texas area.
I was thinking too, because of those 2% and 3% rates that we had for a while, anyone who was, say, 50s, 60s, unless they're buying down, and they bought that big, huge house at 3%, they may or may not downsize at this point. So I think we also have to think about, and it could be wrong, but that person who's got that house at 3% or 2.5% probably doesn't want to sell or purchase right now. So I think for me, it's educating and it's thinking about those buyers in that 30 years, 40 years, first house, maybe second house, where that change in the rate's it's going to be like my first house was 8.75.
Sure.
It's just what it is. You're not seeing that, oh my gosh, my payments, I'm dropping down and my payment's staying the same because I'm going from 3% to 6%, but I'm selling my house at, I think I just have to look kind of there's a different market piece too.
There could be for those people who didn't refinance.
Right.
So the people who bought a house, 10 years ago and they were at 6%, 7%, whatever that number is, right? And if they were to sell now and they didn't refinance, payment would be about the same. Right. But if they refinance to that 2 or 3%, that's where we get into, don't really want to sell because it's going to cost more. The other thing too is government-backed loans, they're assumable, correct? So what does assumable mean for someone who has an FHA or VA loan? The buyer of that house, right, has to qualify.
We haven't done that in so long. They have to.
But they're out there.
Yeah, there are. You can assume an FHA loan.
Yeah, so if you have an FHA loan or a VA loan that is at a lower percentage rate.
That's a great thought.
A buyer could, if they qualify, assume that note and finance the other portion to make up for the sales price, right? So they have two different notes.
That's a great thought. I hadn't really thought about that recently.
Yeah. Now conventional loans are not assumable.
No.
But if they've got a government-backed loan, like
then you'd be getting that super low rate.
Yeah, let's get that. Assume that super low rate. Let's say they're a $400,000 house and this person owes $300,000. So you assume the $300,000 at the 3%, and then you get another note for the extra $100,000 at whatever today's rate is. So that's another option that buyers have, and that sellers can use as another marketing incentive, right, for selling their house.
Yeah, and there's no reason just to sit. I mean, if you have a motive to sell or to purchase, I don't think there's any reason to think I need to wait 2 years.
No.
I mean, there's still so many options, and so many people are relocating from other places, California, New York, where not just interest rates, but property values are so much higher than in Texas. I mean, so what they were paying there for an 800 square foot house, you can buy a 2,000 square foot house here in Texas.
Yeah.
Or bigger. So there's a lot of people think, the market, but there's always going to be people, but real estate's always reshaped, and it's just part of it.
It's just change, right?
Exactly.
It's like the stock market. It changes. It goes up. It goes down. But I mean, look at where the stock market was just 10 years ago, right? I mean, so the real estate market here, especially in North Texas,
that's what I thought, especially in North Texas,
is strong. I don't foresee that our market is going to change that much. Really, right now, it is a good time for both sellers and buyers, because like you said a while ago, a seller's not going to get 40 offers on a house right now. They may get multiple offers, or they may not. I'm writing offers now for less than the list price and getting them accepted, because as I was alluding to earlier, that I didn't really talk all the way through, is that I think what's happening is we're not seeing price reductions. We're seeing offers and sales prices going back towards where the market was before people started prepaying appreciation. because that's the way I looked at it, is when we were in that strong seller's market, people were paying up front appreciation for where they thought the house was going to appraise for 3 to 5 years in the future, right? We're just seeing that go back a little
That's
bit.
a good way of thinking about it. But,
And
yeah,
it's not the market is receding or that we're going backwards. It's just it's stabilizing a little more and getting back to where it should have been.
right. And they're still going to see that increase, like you said, in 3 to 5 years. And
Yeah.
that's not going to, they're still going to see their property values increase. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't guarantee everything, but that's the norm. It's what we have a true pattern of seeing. Like we were talking about even in 2008, when they fell a little bit, I mean, by 2010, they were up again. I mean, like
Yeah.
there was just like a little brief little beep, beep, and then,
Yeah.
so, I mean, we stay strong here. But I like that thought about they prepaid what the gain was supposed to be in 4 or 5 years.
Well, and that was again, education. That's what I was doing with my buyers at that time is I was educating them on, okay, in order to win this house,
That's a great thought.
how
I never
long
thought
do you
about
think
that.
you're going to be in the house? If it's going to
Right.
be more than 5 years, let's go 50,000, however much you think you can put down if you've got the savings, right? Over the appraisal, put that down because you're prepaying for, I mean, on a $400,000 house, we were
Right.
seeing 20% increases here. So in 1 year, they're going to be 80,000 more than what they paid for it. Paying 50,000 up front is like, okay,
And even with a slight market change, we're not seeing appraisals coming in low. We're not seeing anything like that. Like, so the values have still stayed really strong.
right.
I don't think we've had any issues.
Yeah,
I
our
can't
market
even think
hasn't
about
corrected a lot
any.
here in
Yeah,
North Texas.
I was worried a little bit at first when all that we saw a little bit of a change. I was like, oh, I just wondered about the appraisals, but they're still all just
Yeah,
as strong as they need to be. Usually come in over what the list price is, and
yeah.
haven't any issues.
Let's talk about recasting real quick.
Okay.
What is a recast, and what type of let's talk about what type of a buyer would a recast be best for?
So anybody can recast, but a good buyer with a recast is someone who has a house to sell. But that doesn't mean that anybody can. So let's talk about the difference between a recast and a principal payment reduction. Let's say that your house payment is $1,500 a month, but you pay $1,700 with $200 always going to principal reduction. Your payment stays the same each month, but you watch your balance come down because you're paying the extra $200 towards principal.
It's going down faster.
So if you had a house to sell and you want to buy a house or build a house and you don't want to have to sell this house first because you want to live in it while you're building, or you want to buy the new house, you want to rehab this a little bit and then sell it, whatever the reason might be, then when you sell this house, let's say you make $300,000 and your loan balance for the new house is $700,000. Well, if you apply the $300,000 towards principal, once again, our balance drops to $400,000, but our payment stays the same. But in a true recast, the First United services the loan, so we do them, then they pay $325, and that's just for the attorneys to draw the docs. We do it as a service. We don't make anything off of it. And when they apply that $300,000 and their new balance is $400,000, their payment drops as if that $400,000 was their initial loan amount.
Okay.
So you see a huge drop. Now, at First United, we allow a recast once a year for any time or purpose, but you have to put 10% of the loan amount down. So, if you have a $400,000 loan amount, you got to put $40,000 down. If you got a $2 million loan amount, and so forth. So,
Right.
as long as you can put 10% down, you can recast at any time and drop that payment. So, we have people that are heading into retirement that ask me about this all the time, and they want to get that recast going, do it annually, so that they can get that payment lower going into retirement.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of reasons for recast, but especially if you're going to build and you've got a house to sell, then that's just huge.
Okay. Or like you said, if they're buying another house and they don't want to move twice,
Right.
they have to qualify for both, correct?
You did.
And so once they qualify for both, they can buy another house before they sell the house that they're currently in, correct?
Correct. And then even if they just buy a house, they're going to sell this house, they buy their house, and they get nice bonuses, right? They get a good annual bonus. Then husband and wife can get together and they can say, hey, let's consider a recast. let's drop our payment. They could do it every year with whatever bonus they get, year-end bonus, Christmas bonus, whatever that might be, and just kind of just keep whittling it down. I mean, it's amazing. The first recast I did, I was shocked at how much my payment came down, and then I kept doing them. So I didn't really anticipate, for some reason, because we're used to doing the principal balance reduction. We're not used to seeing the payment as well. So that was huge.
Yeah. So yet another.
And again, that's the First United. Since we service them, it can be for
very minimal.
And anybody can do it. It doesn't have to be a large amount.
Yeah.
Or house to sell.
Fantastic. See, she's so knowledgeable. She knows so much about her industry, and I hope you can sense what I know about Maria is that she's very passionate about what she does, and she cares about her clients and wants to do what is in their best interest. And she will work with somebody for years, like you said, in repairing their credit and doing things that they need to do in order to be in the best position to buy a house. So
we, when I say we, for my team and I, Jordan's on my team and Karina, we never want to just say no to anybody. Home ownership's a dream that everybody wants, and getting that second house or that new house because you're bringing a new family member home, whatever that might be. That's as a realtor, how personal it is. I mean, it's huge. And so if I'll never say no. I'll create a plan regardless.
Yeah.
So
as long as that person wants to work the plan.
As long as somebody wants to work the plan. They may or may not want to work that plan, but I'm going to give them a plan.
We worked with somebody recently that didn't want to work the plan.
So sometimes that happens, but overall, I know a lot of people will say, well, you've done this for 20 years. Why do you still do credit repair? And I'm like, because I've done it for 20 years. I mean, it's about educating. It's about helping. It's not just about getting a paycheck, especially after you've done it for 20 years.
Right.
Yeah. And there's no point in just saying no and then just. That just doesn't work with me. I can't just say no and just hang up on somebody. I can only say, let's find a plan. Let's make this work somehow.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So predictions, what do you predict is going to happen in the next year or so? Is 2023 going to be similar to 2022?
I'm not a great predictor, so I would think 2023 is going to be similar. I think if we're going to see those raises, it's going to be after that next election.
Okay.
And I think people are anticipating that. And I think we could still see fluctuation on rates. I mean, I know we've had this nice decline, really over 0.5 point. But we've had that before in the last 6 months, where it went like that. So it's really hard to say right now. Will we go back up to 7? We were almost at 7.25 for a little teeny bit there, and then we dropped right back to 6.5. So, but I say right back, it wasn't like a day. It was like 6 weeks or so. I mean, it was, if you were in the middle of a purchase, it was what it was. Yeah. So, I would have to say it's probably going to be a little bit like this. But if you're on the fence, I'd hop off the fence, because if you could right now find something at 6.25, 6.5, 6.675, anything like that, that's a phenomenal rate overall.
Yeah. Overall.
And I think that with all the different options of FHA, the 2-1 buy now, whatever they might be, recasting in the future, all those things, the dream of home ownership and all of that, and the strength of Texas, it really hasn't changed.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Maria, thank you for being here. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation today, and enjoyed last week's conversation as well. So thank you all for joining us as we conclude our interview with Maria Leach with First United Bank. Make sure that you join us next week as we have another guest who is a fascinating person with an inspiring story. Take care, and y'all have a great day.
The Matt Hilton Show would like to thank our sponsors, Hilton Realty Advisors and Maria Leach with the First United Mortgage Group. The Matt Hilton Show would also like to thank our partners, the Who Do You Know organization. You can find out more at wdyk.org. If you'd like to contact Matt or know a fascinating person with an inspiring story that would make a great guest, reach out to the show at themattHiltonshow@gmail.com.